My name is Dale Konechny, and the first voicemail I ever recovered with tomorrow's date on it was left by a woman who would not be alive to leave it for another 9 days. I want to say that plainly at the start, because everything else I am going to tell you depends on you believing that I am the kind of man who does not exaggerate. I am 61 years old. I worked for 19 years at a regional voicemail recovery service in southern Indiana, on the overnight desk in a beige office park off Highway 37. If you have never heard of such a place, that is by design. We were a small, subcontracted operation, tucked into the back wing of a building that mostly housed an insurance firm and a dental supply distributor. Our job was to retrieve and reconstruct voicemail messages from corrupted, deleted, or partially overwritten carrier servers. If a hospital needed a recording of a patient's last call to their daughter. If a law firm needed a deleted threat from a server backup. If a widow wanted her husband's voice pulled from a phone that had been factory reset. We were the people the phone companies quietly forwarded those requests to. It was tedious work. Most nights were spent watching long progress bars crawl across a screen while a coffee machine in the break room hissed at nobody. The pay was decent. The benefits were better than the pay. And the work, almost all of the time, was the kind of thing you could do half asleep. I want to be honest about something before I go further. I am not the kind of person who looks for the strange in ordinary things. I never believed in ghosts. I never had a brush with anything I could not explain. My wife Eleanor used to say I was the most boring man she had ever loved, and I took that as a compliment. We were married for 26 years before she passed in the spring of 2019. She died at home, in our bedroom, on a Tuesday morning, and the last thing she said to me was that she had left something for me in the kitchen drawer. There was nothing in the kitchen drawer. I checked. I tore the kitchen apart that week looking for whatever she meant. I never found it. After she was gone, I kept working because the apartment was too quiet otherwise. Work was a place where the silence had a purpose. That mattered to me. I am telling you this so you understand that when I describe what happened in the last 11 months of my employment, I am describing it the way I would describe it to a claims adjuster or a doctor. Plainly, without decoration. I have spent a long time trying to find a way to make sense of it, and I have given up. What I have left is the account itself, and a recorder, and a notebook I should have burned. The work was structured around something we called a recovery ticket. A ticket would come in through the carrier's system, get assigned to one of us, and we would pull the relevant server image, run it through the reconstruction software, and either retrieve the audio file or write a report explaining why it could not be retrieved. Each ticket had a strict chain of custody. You logged in, you logged the file accessed, you logged the time of recovery, and you logged out. Every keystroke was tracked. The carriers paid us specifically because we were auditable. If a voicemail came out of our office, it could be sworn to in court. I worked the overnight shift with 2 other people, a woman named Reba, who had been there longer than me and barely spoke, and a younger man named Curtis, who chewed sunflower seeds and watched soccer highlights on his phone between tickets. The 3 of us shared a long room with 12 workstations, only 3 of which were ever staffed at once. The other 9 sat dark, their monitors angled at slightly different positions, like a meeting that had ended a long time ago, and nobody had bothered to push the chairs back in. The first thing that was wrong, and I want to be careful about how I describe this, was a ticket I picked up on a Tuesday in late June of last year. The ticket number was ordinary. The carrier was one we worked with all the time. The recovery target was a voicemail left on a number registered to a man named Aaron Voss. The message had been deleted from the carrier's servers approximately 6 hours before the recovery request was filed. That part was normal. People delete messages and then realize they wanted them. That is most of our business. What was not normal was the timestamp on the message itself. The voicemail had been left at 9:47 in the evening on a Wednesday. The recovery request had come in on a Tuesday morning. The Wednesday in question was the next day. Tomorrow. I assumed it was a clerical error. Carriers miss file dates all the time. I made a note in the ticket, flagged it for supervisor review, and moved on to the next file in my queue. I did not think about it again that night. The next morning, before I left, I checked the ticket out of habit. The timestamp had been corrected. It now read the Wednesday previous, not the Wednesday upcoming. The audio had been recovered successfully and delivered to the requesting party. Case closed. I told myself someone in IT had cleaned it up overnight, and I drove home and slept. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Different number, different carrier, different requesting party. A voicemail time-stamped for a date that had not yet occurred. This time I caught the date before processing the file and pulled it aside. I called the carrier's verification line, gave them the ticket number, and asked them to confirm the timestamp on their end. The woman who answered put me on hold for almost 20 minutes. When she came back, her voice was flatter than it had been before. She told me the timestamp was correct on their system, and asked me to please proceed with the recovery as scheduled. I asked her how a voicemail could have a future timestamp. She said she was not authorized to discuss server architecture, and she hung up. I ran the recovery. The file reconstructed cleanly. I followed the protocol, which required me to listen to a brief sample of the audio to confirm the recovery was viable before releasing it to the requesting party. The sample was supposed to be no more than 5 seconds. I clicked play. The voice on the recording was a woman's. She sounded out of breath. She said, "Mom, please pick up. I think there's someone at the house. I'm calling from the car. Please just call me back, please." The 5 seconds ended. I logged the recovery as successful and released the file. The requesting party was listed as the message's intended recipient, a woman named Patricia in Ohio. I sat at my desk for a long time after that. I told myself the timestamp was a database glitch. I told myself the carrier had simply mishandled the metadata, and the message had been left days ago, not tomorrow. There was no reason for me to believe otherwise. The work continued. 9 days after I processed that ticket, I checked the obituaries in the Ohio paper that served Patricia's area code. I do not know why I checked. I had never done that before. I found a notice for a young woman, 23 years old, who had died on the evening corresponding to the voicemail's timestamp. The circumstances were not described in detail. The notice asked that donations be made to a local women's shelter in lieu of flowers. That was the moment I started the notebook. Over the next 3 months, I logged 7 more of these. I started keeping a private list in a small notebook I bought from a gas station, because I did not want it on any work system. Each entry had the ticket number, the carrier, the timestamp discrepancy, and a one-line summary of what I had heard during the verification sample. I want to be careful here. I was not supposed to retain any personal record of ticket contents. That was a fireable offense and arguably a legal one. But I kept the notebook anyway. I told myself I would destroy it if anyone ever asked. Nobody ever did. The samples I heard during those 3 months were taken individually, nothing remarkable. A man asking his brother to call him back about a car. A teenage girl leaving a message for a friend about a party. An older man's voice slurred, saying he loved someone named Diane and was sorry. The kind of messages we processed by the thousands. The only thing that connected them was the timestamps, which all corresponded to dates between 4 hours and 9 days in the future. I started checking the news. Not every recovery resulted in something I could verify, because most voicemails are mundane and leave no public trace. But 3 of the 7 did. The teenage girl's party message corresponded to the night of a house fire in Kentucky that killed 2 people, one of whom shared her first name. The man asking about the car corresponded 2 days later to a single-vehicle accident on a stretch of road in Missouri. The slurred message to Diane corresponded to nothing I could find. But when I looked up the number, the registered owner had died of a heart attack on the same evening the message was timestamped. I want to be clear that I am not claiming these were prophecies. I am claiming that the timestamps on the voicemails in question were dated to evenings on which the people involved had something happen to them. That is all I am claiming. I am not a researcher. I am a man with a notebook. In September, I tried to bring it up to my supervisor, a woman named Margaret who worked the day shift and overlapped with us for about 40 minutes each morning. I waited until Curtis and Reba had left, and I told Margaret I had been noticing some timestamp irregularities and wanted to know if there was a formal process for reporting them. Margaret listened. She was a careful listener, the kind who let you finish before she said anything. When I was done, she asked me how long I had been seeing these. I told her 3 months. She asked me how many. I told her about 7 that I was sure of. She nodded, and she did not look surprised, and she told me to come into her office. Margaret's office was at the back of the wing, past a hallway with 3 locked doors that I had never seen anyone open. She sat down behind her desk and looked at me for a moment before she spoke. Then she said very quietly that the timestamp issue was a known issue. and that the company's policy was to process the tickets as assigned and not to discuss them with the requesting parties, the carriers, or each other. She said the recoveries were valid and the audio was real and the carriers were aware. She said that if I felt unable to continue processing those tickets, I could transfer to the day shift, where they were not assigned. She said that if I chose to remain on the overnight shift, I would continue to receive them, and I was expected to handle them like any other ticket. I asked her what they were. She said she did not know. She said nobody at our level knew. She said the contract that governed our handling of those tickets was signed at a level above our office, and that the only thing she had been told, when she was promoted into her current role, was that the recoveries were to be completed and released without delay, without note, and without inquiry. I asked her why. She said that delay had consequences, and inquiry had consequences, and that she was telling me this as a courtesy because I had been with the company a long time, and she liked me. Then she told me to go home and think about whether I wanted to stay on overnights. I spent the next 2 days thinking about it. I sat in the apartment with the curtains open and the television off, and tried to be honest with myself about what I was choosing. The truth was that I did not have anywhere else to be. The apartment was still too quiet. Eleanor had been gone 4 years, and I had not learned to fill the silence with anything except work, and the thought of giving up the overnight shift meant giving up the one stretch of hours where I felt useful. I told myself I could keep my head down. I told myself I could do the job without thinking about it too hard. I told myself a lot of things. I went back to overnights. I'm not proud of that decision, but I want you to understand it. In October, the tickets began to change in a way I had not anticipated. Up until then, the voicemails I had been recovering were always for other people, strangers in other states. I had no personal connection to any of them. That changed on a Thursday night in the second week of October, when I logged into my queue and saw a ticket with my own area code on the destination number. The number was not mine. It belonged to a woman named Helen Bachner, who lived in the same town I did. The voicemail had been left on her phone at 10:14 at night on a date approximately 30 hours in the future. The requesting party was Helen herself, which meant she had not yet requested the recovery, because the message had not yet been left. The ticket existed before its own preconditions. I did the only thing I knew how to do. I followed the protocol. I pulled the file, ran the reconstruction, and listened to my 5-second verification sample. The voice on the recording was mine. I sat in my chair and listened to myself say, in a voice that sounded tired and a little hoarse, "Helen, it's Dale. I'm sorry to call so late, but I think I need to tell you about something I've been seeing at work. Can you call me back when you get this? It's important." The sample cut off. The rest of the file was approximately 90 seconds long, but the protocol only permitted me to verify the first 5 seconds. I released the file to the requesting party, who was a woman I had never met, and I sat at my desk for the rest of the shift, trying not to think about what I had done. I did not know Helen Bachner. I had never called her. I had no reason to call her the next evening. I had no reason to call anyone the next evening. I lived alone. The voicemail I had just helped deliver had not yet been left, but it was now in the possession of a woman who, in roughly 30 hours, would receive a call from me about something I had not yet told anyone. I went home that morning and did not sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with the notebook open and tried to think clearly. The most rational explanation, I told myself, was that someone was impersonating my voice, that the entire timestamp phenomenon was an elaborate fraud being run through our office for reasons I could not guess at, and that I had somehow been selected as a target. That was the rational explanation. I clung to it. I did not call Helen Bachner that day. I did not call her that evening. I did not call anyone. I sat in my apartment with my phone turned off and the curtains drawn, and at 10:14 at night, I watched the clock turn over on the microwave display and felt a kind of relief I had not expected. I had broken the loop. Whatever was supposed to happen had not. I went back to work the next night, and there was a new ticket in my queue. The destination number was Helen Bachner's. The voicemail had been left at 10:14 the previous evening. The requesting party was Helen Bachner. The timestamp was now in the past. I pulled the file. I listened to the sample. It was my voice. Tired. A little hoarse, saying the same words I had heard the night before. I had not made that call. My phone had been off. I had been sitting at my kitchen table the entire evening. And yet the recording existed, time-stamped to a moment when I knew with absolute certainty that I had not been on a phone. I want to describe what that feels like, because I think it matters. It is not fear exactly. It is something colder than fear. It is the feeling of finding out that you have been playing a game you did not know was being played, and that everyone else at the table has been playing it longer than you. I started keeping a closer log after that. Not just of the tickets, but of my own life. Where I went, who I spoke to, what I bought, when I slept. I treated my own existence the way I would treat a chain of custody. I wanted, if it came to it, to be able to prove where I had been. I bought a small audio recorder and kept it in my shirt pocket during the day, running constantly. I told myself this was reasonable. Looking back, I am not sure it was. In November, I started noticing the second pattern. The carriers I worked with had begun routing certain tickets specifically to me. Not Reba, not Curtis, me. The routing algorithm in our system was supposed to assign tickets based on availability, not by name. But over the course of 3 weeks, I noticed that every ticket with a future timestamp went to my queue. I asked Curtis once, casually, whether he had been seeing any strange timestamps. He shrugged and said he had seen 1 or 2 over the years, but nothing recently. I asked Reba the same question. She looked at me for a long moment and then said quietly that she used to see them. And then one night she stopped, and she had never asked why, and she was not going to ask why now. She told me she had a son in college, and she wanted to keep her job. Then she went back to her workstation, and did not speak to me again for the rest of the night. I understood. I was not angry. I would have done the same thing in her position. I had done the same thing more or less the night I had talked to Margaret. The tickets with my voice kept coming. Each one was a recording of me calling someone I did not know, leaving a message about something I had not done. Sometimes I was warning them. Sometimes I was apologizing. Sometimes I was just saying their name and asking them to call me back. The recordings averaged about 90 seconds. I could only ever hear the first 5. I started writing down everything I could remember from the verification samples. I wanted to see if there was a pattern. After about 30 entries, I noticed something I should have noticed earlier. The voicemails were always left late at night. The earliest was a little after 9 in the evening. The latest was just before midnight. And in every single one, when I could make out enough of the audio, I was either telling the person not to do something, or telling them I was sorry I had not gotten there in time. I was a man who was calling people, in some other version of events, to try to warn them about things that were about to happen. And I was failing. The voicemails were the record of my failure. Every recovery I processed was a moment where I had not picked up, or had not been believed, or had been too late. In early December, I came in for a shift and found a new ticket in my queue. The destination number was mine. The voicemail had been left at 2:31 in the morning on a date approximately 19 hours in the future. The requesting party was listed as me. I had not requested it. The file was already reconstructed and waiting for my verification sample. I want to say I hesitated. I want to say I followed some kind of protocol or called someone or thought it through. I did not. I clicked play. The voice on the recording was mine. It was breathing hard, the way you breathe when you have just come up a flight of stairs too fast. It said, "Dale, listen to me. Do not answer the door tonight. No matter who it is, no matter what they say, do not open the door. Do you understand?" The sample cut off at 5 seconds. The rest of the file was approximately 40 seconds long. I could not legally listen to it. I sat at my desk and stared at the screen. And then I did something I had never done in 19 years of employment. I copied the file. I want to explain why this mattered. The recovery software was designed to prevent extraction. Every file we handled was watermarked, tracked, and tied to a single output destination. There was no copy function. There were no removable drives. The workstations had no internet access. The system was sealed. But I had been there 19 years, and in 19 years you learn the shape of the building. I had noticed years earlier that the verification headphones plugged into a jack that bypassed the output watermarking, because the watermarking happened at the export stage, not at playback. I had never had a reason to think about it again. That night, I had a reason. I plugged my pocket recorder into the headphone jack instead of my headphones, and I clicked play on the file from the beginning. The verification timer started its 5-second count, and the audio began. "Dale, listen to me. Do not answer the door tonight. No matter who it is, no matter what they say, do not open the door. Do you understand? I know you're going to want to. I know what you're going to think when you hear the knock. You're going to think it's her. It's not her. It has never been her. I'm sorry I can't explain more than that. I'm sorry about a lot of things. There's a notebook in your kitchen drawer. Burn it. Don't read it again. Don't try to call anyone. Just sit in the apartment with the lights off and wait until morning. If you open the door, you become the one who makes these calls. Do you understand me? You become the one who makes these calls. The recording ended. The verification timer had long since expired. The system had flagged my workstation for an extended playback event, which would generate an automatic report in Margaret's queue the next morning. I had maybe 6 hours before she saw it. I unplugged the recorder. I released the file to the requesting party, who was me. I logged out of my workstation. I told Curtis I was not feeling well and was going home early. He nodded without looking up from his phone. I drove home in the dark. The roads were empty. It had snowed lightly the night before and the salt trucks had been through, and the asphalt had that particular grainy black look it gets in early December. I let myself into my apartment. I went to the kitchen drawer and took out the notebook. I sat at the table and looked at it for a long time. I thought about what Eleanor had said the morning she died, that she had left something for me in the kitchen drawer. I had torn the kitchen apart that week and found nothing, and I had decided eventually that she had been confused at the end, that she had meant something else, or nothing at all. I had stopped looking. But the notebook was in the kitchen drawer now. I had put it there myself, 4 months earlier, on the first night I had decided to keep a record of what was happening. And it occurred to me, sitting at that table at almost 9 in the evening, that I could not actually remember choosing that drawer. I could not remember the decision. I had simply put it there, the way you put a thing where it belongs. I want to tell you I burned it. I want to tell you I followed the instructions on the recording. I did not. I read it instead. Every entry, every ticket, every 5-second sample I had transcribed, I read it the way you read something you already know by heart, just to confirm it is still there. Then I put it back in the drawer. I turned off all the lights in the apartment. I sat in the chair at the kitchen table, with my back to the wall, and the recorder in front of me, and my phone, turned off, beside it. I waited. The knock came at 2:31 in the morning. I had been sitting in the dark for almost 6 hours by then. I had not eaten. I had not slept. I had been thinking about what the recording said, and about Helen Backner, who I had never met but who, somewhere out there, had a voicemail from me on her phone. I had been thinking about the man who had called his brother about a car, about a teenage girl in Kentucky, about Diane, about all the people who had been on the other end of those messages, who had heard my voice, or someone's voice, and had not picked up. The knock was soft. 3 taps, then a pause, then 3 more. I did not get up. I did not call out. I sat in the chair and listened. A voice on the other side of the door said my name. It was a woman's voice. I had not heard that voice in almost 7 years, and I want to tell you I did not recognize it, but I did. I recognized it immediately. It said my name the way she used to say it when she was trying to wake me up gently, when she did not want me to be startled. It said, "Dale, honey, it's me. Can you open the door? I'm cold." I sat in the chair. The voice said, "Dale, please, I've been walking for a long time. I just want to come inside." I sat in the chair. The voice said, "Dale, I know you can hear me. I know you're sitting at the table. You've been sitting there all night. Please just open the door. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just tired." I sat in the chair. This went on for about 40 minutes. The voice did not raise. It did not threaten. It did not change. It just spoke, patiently, the way you would speak to a child you were trying to coax out of a hiding place. It knew things it should not have known. It knew about the notebook in the drawer. It knew about the recorder on the table. It knew about a fight Eleanor and I had had in the kitchen of our old house in the fall of 2003 about a bank statement, which was a fight I had never told another living soul about. It said, at one point, that she forgave me for it. That was when I almost stood up. I want to be clear about that. I almost stood up. I had my hand on the arm of the chair. I had begun to lift my weight. And then I thought about the recording, about my own voice saying, "It has never been her." And I sat back down. The voice stopped a little before dawn. There was no sound of footsteps leaving. There was no creak on the landing. The voice simply stopped, mid-sentence, in the middle of saying that she was going to go now if I did not want to see her. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard. I did not move for another 2 hours. I sat in the chair and watched the kitchen window go from black to grey to the pale washed colour that comes before sunrise in winter. When the light through the window was strong enough to see by, I got up and walked to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. There were no footprints in the salt that had been tracked in from the building entrance. There was nothing on the welcome mat. There was no indication that anyone had ever been there. I made coffee. My hands were not steady, but they worked. I drank it standing up at the counter, and I tried to think about what I was going to do. I did not go to work that night. I called Margaret around 10 in the morning and resigned over the phone. She did not try to talk me out of it. She did not ask what had happened. She said she understood. She said the final paperwork would be mailed to me. She said, before she hung up, that she was sorry, and that she hoped I would not be contacted. I asked her what she meant by that. She said she meant exactly what she said, and then she hung up. That was 4 months ago. I want to tell you that nothing has happened since. I want to tell you that the apartment has been quiet, and the phone has not rung, and the knock has not come back. Most of that is even true. The phone has not rung, the knock has not come back. But 3 weeks ago, I checked my own voicemail for the first time since I quit. There were no messages in my main inbox. There were, however, 4 messages in a folder I had never seen before, labeled with my carrier's diagnostic code. The folder was named for pending delivery. The messages in that folder are dated to evenings between 2 weeks and 4 months from now. I have not listened to any of them. I do not intend to. I unplugged the answering machine and put my cell phone in a drawer in the kitchen, next to the notebook I did not burn. But here is the part I have not been able to stop thinking about. The voice at the door knew about the bank statement. It knew about Eleanor's last morning. It knew that she had told me she had left something in the kitchen drawer, and that I had never found it. And I have been sitting at this table for 4 months now, looking at the notebook, which I put in that drawer myself, on a night I cannot quite remember deciding anything. I do not think Eleanor left me the notebook. I want to be clear about that. I do not believe in that kind of thing. But I have started to wonder whether the drawer was waiting for it. Whether the drawer has always been waiting for something, and whether the thing in it now is mine to leave, the way she meant to leave hers to me. I have begun to wonder who will find it, because the voicemails in the pending folder are going to be delivered to someone on the evenings they are dated to. And if I am the one who left them, then somewhere between now and 4 months from now, I am going to make 4 phone calls I have not yet decided to make. I am going to tell 4 people something I do not yet know. I think about the knock sometimes. I think about how patient the voice was. I think about what the recording told me, that if I opened the door, I would become the one who makes these calls. And I think about the fact that I did not open the door, and that the calls are scheduled anyway. I'm not sure I understood the rule correctly. I'm not sure there was a rule. The cell phone is in the drawer. The notebook is in the drawer. The recorder is on the table. And somewhere in a server I no longer have access to, 4 messages are sitting in a queue, waiting for the evenings they belong to, in a voice that the system has already decided is mine.